By the way, random side note here. For people that want to know if there's any updates on the Julian Sands case, there isn't. As of filming this, there are no updates. You're going to notice that the audio quality of this video is very bad. I apologise for that. I am not Houdini, okay? I cannot just make shit magically happen. And my microphone broke a few days ago, okay? So I'm going to have to replace it. Honestly, the money that I've spent on microphones this year is laughable. Next week, I'll be getting a new decent mic, a better one, and everything will be back on track. Hey, it's Mel. I hope you're doing well and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, it's lovely to have you here. Today we're going to be looking at the disappearance of 19-year-old college student Brandon Swanson, who disappeared one night in 2008. This case is still unsolved, and the reason why it gets to me and makes me feel some type of way is because this could literally happen to any of us. Out of all the missing persons cases I've covered or talked about, this is the most bizarre. With that being said, let's get into it. Brandon Swanson was a college student. He was 19 years old. Brandon was born on the 30th of January 1989. He attended Minnesota West Community and Technical College, and he was a good student. He was 5'6", wore glasses and had curly brown hair. He had pierced ears, blue eyes, and a small scar above his left eye. He is legally blind in his left eye. Brandon was last seen wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt, under a blue striped polo sweatshirt, along with a black hoodie that had an emblem on the back. He also wore a white Minnesota Twins baseball cap. He was also wearing white trainers and a silver necklace. That is the physical description of Brandon. On the 14th of May 2008, Brandon set out to celebrate the end of that year's classes with his friends. He attended a couple of local gatherings that evening. First in Lind near his home in Marshall, then in Canby, roughly 35 miles from his home. Brandon's friends would later report that while he was drinking, he didn't seem drunk. Brandon left Canby sometime after midnight to drive home, a trip that he made practically every day as a part of his commute to and from college. But that night, instead of taking Minnesota State Highway 68, the most direct route between Canby and Marshall, Brandon chose to drive through rural farm roads, perhaps to avoid police because he had been drinking a little. He soon got in trouble. He drove into a ditch near a farming field and he couldn't get out because his car wheels were elevated. Around 1:54 a.m, Brandon called his parents asking for a ride home. He told them he was near Lind, about 10 minutes from their home in Marshall. His parents headed out the door and drove to go and pick him up, and as they drove, they stayed connected to him on the call. However, they found nothing but darkness. Brandon even asked on the phone, "Do you see me?" And they even flashed their car's headlights and said, "No, we don't." Brandon hung up, and his mum called him back and apologised. Brandon told his parents that he would just walk back to his friend's house in Lind. So Brandon's dad dropped his wife off at home and then continued towards Lind to pick up his son. Still on the phone, while walking in the darkness, Brandon suggested that his dad meet him in the parking lot of a popular nightclub in Lind, and Brandon decided to cut across a field as a shortcut. Brandon's dad heard him walking along and he suddenly yelled, quote, "Oh shit." The call ended and that was Brandon's final words. That was the last time anyone saw him. His mum and dad called his phone multiple times, but they went straight to voicemail. The rest of the night, Brandon's family, his friends, were all searching for him in rural areas and endless gravel roads and farmlands. But this led to nothing. The next morning, Brandon's mum at 6:30 a.m. called the Lind police and reported her son missing. But at first, the police didn't take the matter seriously, and this always happens and it frustrates me. When the police hear of a child or a teenager going missing, they just assume, oh, the child's run away. The teenagers are dramatic, they've just run away and need some space. Like, no, Brandon was not like that. He would not just leave without telling his family or friends or just someone where he was going. And as far as I'm aware, he did not deal with any sort of mental illness. There's no history of mental illness in the family, and Brandon was really well behaved. The police just thought that Brandon had wandered off and he'd be back soon. But as time went on, local officers eventually joined the search, then requested a county-wide search response. Missing persons posters were made and put up everywhere. Brandon's phone was still working. and police triangulated the location of his last call to the nearest cell tower. It was in Porter, about 20 miles away from where Brandon thought he was. A search happened on the area around Porter, and soon Brandon's green Chevy Lumina sedan car was found that afternoon. The car was stuck in a ditch off of Lyon at Lincoln Road, between Porter and Taunton, but police found no signs of foul play or Brandon himself. A massive search began with over 100 volunteers, including helicopters, police and dogs. The dogs led the police roughly 3 miles away from the ditch to the Yellow Medicine River, which was flowing very high and fast, before losing Brandon's scent. No clothes of Brandon's were found, and after 3 weeks of searches, the case went cold. In late 2008, Emergency Support Services, which was a search and rescue organization based in Minneapolis, identified a 140 square mile area of interest and focused their search there. However, some farmers refused to allow search dogs onto their land, especially during planting and harvest season. I'm not trying to be funny, you don't want anyone on your land, that's fine, but it's a missing person we're dealing with here. Let the dog search your land, let the people and the police do their job so we can find a teenager, okay? Brandon had no history of mental illness, aside from being blind in his left eye. He was perfectly healthy. His body has not been found, leading some to believe that he might still be alive. One of the theories is that Brandon fell into a river that night, but the police don't buy it, and nor does his mum. Like, she doesn't believe he drowned in a river. It just doesn't make sense. A dog followed his scent from his car down to a log gravel truck, toward an abandoned farm. The 3-mile-long trail also led to the river. It seems unlikely that Brandon would stage his own disappearance, as he was trying to get home that night. Not only that, he was very happy with his life. He loved his parents, he loved his friends. There is another theory which I don't buy either, and it's the fact that Brandon had either a mental breakdown or died by suicide. But then again, his body would be found. I honestly have no idea what happened to Brandon. This case is just baffling. On the 1st of July 2009, a bill was passed called Brandon's Law, which requires police to immediately take in a missing persons report and begin an investigation, regardless of the missing person's age. Brandon's parents did this in order to prevent other families from having to experience the same obstacles that they encountered, while trying to initiate the search for their missing son. To my knowledge, the case is still open and searches for Brandon continue. His phone, car keys and clothes have not been found. Something I find very odd is that on the morning of his disappearance, Brandon forgot to take his glasses with him from his car, meaning that night he was wandering around in the dark without his glasses. That seems like something that you don't forget, especially considering the fact that he was blind in his left eye. I don't know, maybe that's just a mere coincidence, but I found that kind of odd. Something else I forgot to mention here, apologies. Right before Brandon yelled "oh shit" to his dad on the phone, he yelled "oh, not another fence," suggesting that he might have slipped into an unmarked cistern or a well, which are normal in rural areas. This case remains unsolved. I am honestly lost with it. Like, I don't know what to think. Leave a comment below what your thoughts are in this case. That is all for today. That was the strange disappearance of Brandon Swanson. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.